Hi, I'm Liz Whiteacre, and I'm here to talk about the value of providing and receiving constructive feedback. Week 5's objectives is to participate in peer review and demonstrate an awareness of etiquette. We'll also think about micro-level and macro-level feedback, and you'll demonstrate your understanding of these two different styles through track changes notes and video feedback on your partner's work. We'll also think about how we can provide constructive feedback, both oral and written, on peers' proposals during the peer review. The revision process is going to be a fluid one, and as we talked about earlier in the course, the rhetorical situation, that's going to affect how you choose to revise your work. For example, if you are engaged with an RSO on campus and it's your job to write an email to all the students at UIndy, you probably will have a friend, a roommate, someone from the club read over that email before you hit send, because you want to make sure you are sending a clear message, that it's something that your audience is going to pay attention to and engage with, and that you're presenting yourself professionally. The same goes with all of your academic coursework, the resume and cover letter that you're sending off to get that internship or that job. So regardless of the style of revision you use for particular communication, our goals are always to make sure that as writers and communicators, we're sending a clear message, we're engaging our audience, and we're presenting ourselves professionally. We're putting work out there that we can be proud of. Lots of different methods. You will be introduced to different styles of revision, both providing feedback, receiving feedback, looking at your own work when you do the readings this week. There are a few techniques that I'm a fan of I thought I'd share here. One is reading backwards. If you're like me and it's easy for you to look at an essay a million times and then totally miss maybe a homonym or a leap from one idea to the next idea that made sense to you, but it doesn't make sense to your readers, reading your work backwards can be really helpful. You can go hardcore and read sentence by sentence backwards, but what I usually do is start with the conclusion paragraph and read it, and then move back up towards my introductory paragraph. What this does is stops the loop of what I think should be there and what is actually on the page. When you're reading your own work, it's so easy for you to assume what's in your head is on the page, so that you're anticipating what should come and you're not really seeing exactly what's there. So reading backwards can disrupt that and make you edit your work in a different way, because you're not, oh yeah, that's there. Okay, I got it. It forces you to look at things a little bit more independently and then make connections and make sure that what you're saying is on the page. You can also provide different analysis techniques. We're talking about reading critically. This term, when we're looking at our sources, you can use those same criteria to apply to your own work as well. Are you relevant? Are you credible? Are you integrating sources in a meaningful way, etc.? So you can look at your own work just as you would look at the work of other people. You can also do revision prompts. This is helpful because you can kind of test how things are going. I like to think of it as a proof for writing for the scientists we have in our class. If you make a change, right, if you've written your responsible researcher essay and you can pick up paragraph 3 and move it to be paragraph 1, right? If you can disrupt the structure, then you might want to think about, well, does it work better that way? Or is this something that I've not created meaningful transitions that really bind things together? If I have a paragraph and I can kind of move all of the sentences around. Have I done my job of kind of introducing the source material that I'm presenting to my readers and explaining why it's there? So revision prompts can be helpful. It can also be simply changing the point of view, changing tense, right? Those different types of things too for different assignments that you're working on. Copy editing and proofreading are skills that you will develop in this class, and you already bring with you a lot in that area. Copy editing is more substantial. When you're looking to copy edit your work, you're still looking at how the ideas are presented on the page, whereas proofreading comes at the end of the process where you think, this is my final draft, and I'm just making sure that there are no typographical errors, design errors, etc. There's also the closed door strategy. This is a little bit harder to use in a term that is 14 weeks, moving super fast. You can't just set your work aside necessarily and give it time to sit and then come back to it. But you can do that for some of the projects you have. If you have a paper that maybe takes 3 weeks in between starting and deadline, you can work to get a rough draft done early, let it set for a few days to a week, and then come back to it and revise. Or you're interested in trying to get an internship this summer or next term, you could start that resume now, let it sit for a month or two before it's time to start applying, and then come back to that and look at it with fresh and new eyes. And of course, soliciting feedback from people you trust, people you know, and other writers is always helpful. When we are giving feedback to other people on pretty much everything, there is a macro level feedback and a micro level feedback. And this is important to think about when you approach peer review this week, because you can help the other writers in a lot of different ways. Sometimes we come into peer review and we think, oh, I'm not good at grammar, I'm not good at this, and I can't fix this paper for this person. But peer review isn't about fixing anything. It's about providing a reader response. So your first level of response should be on the macro level. And if you look at the globe I chose as a visual aid here, you're thinking about the big picture. You're thinking about the whole thing and providing feedback on, what do you think this, in this case, essay is about? Can you point to a sentence that you feel summarizes the writer's point? Is there a thesis statement there? Are things generally making sense when you get done reading? Do you understand what it is you're supposed to have learned? Do you understand maybe what you're supposed to do with the information? So that macro level is that global feedback and letting the writer know what you think. If maybe there was a place where you got confused, or maybe there was a place where you got really excited because you know something about that, and, oh, well, what about this? This would be a really cool idea. And then on the other side of the screen, I included a detailed shot of an apartment with everything laid out. And I'd like you to think of that as micro level feedback. That is the type of feedback where you're looking perhaps at the structure of ideas, you're looking at the structure of sentences, you're getting into the line and maybe making some comments on, well, you haven't integrated this source perhaps as carefully as you could, right? Or maybe there's more information here than I really need to be able to understand your point. Or maybe here's an MLA citation error, or maybe you need to provide attribution for this idea. So we'll be focusing on both types of feedback and peer review, and generally throughout all of our helping each other in the course. I have put a graphic here of a workshop because I'd like you to think about your skills as a writer as you having a lot of different tools. The tools that you're working on developing, strengthening, using more efficiently and effectively in this course are things that will stay with you for ever and always, and will be there for you whenever you need to communicate with someone. It's important to think about, let's say, a hammer, right? That jumped out to me there. You can use that hammer in a lot of different ways in order to produce a lot of different things. So when you are thinking about kind of globally structuring your work, when you're thinking about source integration, when you're thinking about attribution and voice and style, how you're crafting your sentences, there are lots of different ways to go about it. So I do encourage you to explore this term. Try things out. If you haven't used a colon, try it on, see how it works, right? If you're curious about the M dash, now's the time to practice. You're going to have reader feedback in our peer reviews, and I'm very happy to talk about all different kinds of ways to make sentences, and we'll be looking at that in your own work this term through feedback as well. When you get started with peer review, it is really important that you give the work and the writer your full attention. Make some space this week. You're going to have more than one partner. So you might identify, this day I'm going to work on this. This day I'm going to work on this. Break it up. Don't try to do this all an hour before the deadline, please. Right? And also give yourself a quiet space, or if you're like my family and you like to listen to music, put on your chill music. But don't try to do this with your phone dinging and a TV show going and trying to eat, right? Really take time to be with the essay and think about what the writer is trying to share with you. And again, your goal then is to provide feedback on your personal reader experience, right? You are not charged with correcting every single grammar error. You're not charged with trying to address all citations. Instead, your job is to let the person know, hey, I read this and this is what I learned from it, right? And these are places where I thought it was awesome, and these are places where maybe I got a little confused. So you're really trying to think about, okay, I'm going through and or boy, I had to reread that sentence 4 times, right? Or whoa, that was awesome. I wish I did that in my own paper. So you're just providing that feedback on how you went through the essay. And then as you go through the essay, you're going to record your feedback using track changes, line edits, and then also comments. At the end, you're going to record a short video response to the writer, and then we will post all of that good feedback to the forums, and you'll have an opportunity to engage with each peer review partner in discussion. And finally, we ask that you be respectful and productive, right? Saying something is bad or it stinks, oh, well, that just feels bad, and I don't know what to do to try and make things better as a writer. So make sure that you consider, if you come across something that really is off-putting to you, to take a little time to think about why. Oftentimes it comes back to context. The writer has made a mental leap, right? In their head, it's all there on the page, but they've gone from point A to point R very quickly, and we get confused by that, and I don't understand it. Or it could be as simple as maybe the way a sentence is written is hard for you to follow, and simplifying that sentence or turning a fragment into a complete sentence could be a really easy fix. So think about why you're having a response, and then perhaps posing that as a question, or letting the writer know, I didn't quite understand how we went from this idea to this idea. Could you explain that in your essay? Or I'm not sure why this, or I think this might not be MLA format. Maybe you need a citation here. So you can always, ask things as questions, especially if you don't feel 110% confident, maybe that you're right, but you're seeing something you haven't seen in other essays. So talk it out. Let them know what you're thinking, rather than just short declarative, yes, no, no, yes, right? We want to put that in context for our writers so that they understand why we're having our response, and maybe some ideas for what they can do about it. This is an example of those macro and micro level feedback. This is coming from English 270 assignment, English 270 is Introduction to Creative Writing. It is a Gen Ed. You may be interested in taking it. It fulfills both of the fine arts credits. It's very hard to get examples of peer review because it requires the writer giving permission to share a rough draft and the reviewer to share personal comments that they're making to someone. So this is a poem written by a woman named Sam, and a woman named Kylie is commenting on that in peer review, or workshop is what we call it, an introduction to creative writing. I have their permission to share, and I thought that this would be helpful for you to see before you head into peer review for this class. Notice that track changes, if you've not used it before, will record in the lines, like that very first line, baby, 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 oh. Kylie felt that the two babies following the first shouldn't be proper nouns. And so she just went ahead and changed the big B to a little b, and track changes track that for her. So you can see the B underlined in blue, and then over on the column, you can see that she deleted those two B's. So if you go in and, oh, you need to move the period here after the citation, or this sentence would be helpful if you notice three lines down, like, comma, really, comma, I'm not Justin Bieber. Now you're really curious to read this poem, aren't you? Kylie felt that putting the comma at the start of the non-essential element would be very helpful to her. So she went in and just kind of put in those different suggestions for small grammar, those micro-level feedback. And then she created comments. So if you take a look at the highlighted woman and follow that dotted line over, you'll see she says, you could break this into two stanzas here since you're switching to the day of the birth. So Kylie's suggesting, hey, we're moving in time here, and it could be helpful to me as a reader in order to have that visual break, that this happened and now this is happening, right? Rather than just saying break here, right? She explained why she felt that would be helpful, right? If you start kind of reading on the right-hand side, you know, she shares, rather than just saying break up line, she says this line could be broken up since the others are shorter, right? Maybe replace what I said or what I yelled or something so there's not the double was, right? And so that is her personal preference as a reader. She did not respond well to that repetition. And so she's also offering other options to the writer to kind of help illustrate to the writer of what she's talking about. And then finally, in that very last line, Kylie is providing an overview. To me, the speaker is sharing her experience with childbirth. So she's letting Sam know, this is what I think the poem's about. I like the humor in this poem a lot, especially in the second half. I think splitting into two stanzas would be really beneficial. So she's kind of saying, this is what it's about, right? This is something I really enjoyed about the piece. And kind of ideally, if you only do one change, right, this is what I think might be most important as a reader. So I hope that this is helpful. You're also going to have an opportunity, since this is an online class and we can't meet together face-to-face to talk about our feedback, I'll be asking you to make a video response. And in that, I'm asking you to share directly to the writer, what are two things that you feel are very successful about the Responsible Researcher essay? And also, what are two things you think that they should focus on during their week that they can be revising their essay? So step 2 of workshop, sorry, or peer review here. I think I did a mental oops. So here's a blooper for everybody. I guess we made it to week 5, right? Since we will move on very professionally. So step 2 is sharing your feedback that you've put in the files, right? Your track changes note on their paper, and also your short video to the forum in ACE before the deadline. You'll review the feedback that your partners have provided to you in that space. In the LMS, there will be a forum where your names are listed, and so that's who you will be working with. And I'll ask you to make a post to each one of your partners that shares a thank you, or thank you for your time thinking about this and giving me advice, and a follow-up question. And if you read what your partners have said and you're not sure what to ask them, in the LMS on the guidelines page, I have provided a list of sample questions, right? And you're welcome to pick one that you think is most appropriate to your situation and pose that question to your partners. I appreciate that peer review can be weird sometimes, especially if it's not something that you do a lot. I believe, and I believe this so strongly, I even work with the writing lab here at the university, that professionals get feedback. So as you are learning how to provide feedback to other people and how to ask for feedback yourself, it's important that it becomes just a part of your routine, your habit, because there's such a benefit in having another set of eyes look things over before you share it with other people. Just hands down. I ask for feedback all the time from everybody. Probably too much, but I also give a lot of feedback too. I help out my colleagues, students, even students who aren't taking classes with me anymore will come back and say, well, what do you think about this? Especially when it comes time for job searches and applications to graduate school. So make it a part of your routine. If this feels very uncomfortable, that is okay, but you should make it a personal goal to figuring out a way to make it comfortable a part of your practice. And I'm very happy to talk with you. You can message me or pop into office hours so that we can figure out a practice that works really great for you. And then finally, before we end on our deadline, please respond to what people have said to you, right? People are going to ask you questions, so follow up and answer them. And then also read the answers to your questions. And then you can take all of that information, apply it to your paper as you revise for its deadline the following week. So I guess that was a spoiler, but looking ahead, right? It's peer review this week, and our goal is to make sure that everyone has very clear, effective, engaging, responsible researcher essays. That's the goal. And then for next week, week 6, we will be doing 2 things. One will be revising your proposal based on the feedback that you received and submitting it to me for evaluation and review. And then the other thing is shifting gears from academic writing to more professional-based writing. We will be looking at what's a blog, what's WordPress, and you'll be setting up your account. If you have questions this week as you are providing feedback or creating your videos or using track changes, don't hesitate to get in touch. And also, as you're getting feedback, if you're unsure how to respond in your own revision of your essay, get in touch about that too. I can't wait to see your final papers.